Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. It was a showdown between two presidents yesterday, and guess who won? Colombian President Gustavo Petro made a dramatic about-face yesterday, offering his presidential plane to pick up Colombian migrants from the U.S. after President Donald Trump imposed retaliatory measures in response to Petro's initial refusal to accept deportation flights. We have the details of what happened over the weekend. Also, the Trump administration rolled out a social media thread yesterday highlighting the worst criminals arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement since President Donald Trump was sworn in as the nation's 47th president last week. We have that info for you as well. Border Czar Tom Homan warned ABC News yesterday that daily deportation numbers are set to rise in the coming weeks as Trump 2.0 begins to expand its operations. And the new CIA boss, John Ratcliffe, says that the Biden-era report backing lab leak theory has been released to restore trust. We have a busy Monday for you. Let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Colombian President Petro made a dramatic about-face yesterday. He started to play a game of chicken with Donald Trump, and he learned pretty quickly you don't play chicken with Donald Trump. As President Trump imposed retaliatory measures in response to President Petro's initial refusal to accept deportation flights. So here's what happened. In a statement issued by the Colombian government, the administration emphasized its commitment to providing a dignified return for migrants deported from the U.S. The statement confirmed that Petro had arranged for the presidential plane to transport deportees back to Colombia. The statement read, "This measure responds to the government's commitment to guarantee decent conditions." Now, this makes no sense whatsoever. Evidently, he claims that his pushback was, his objection was, the fact that the U.S. government had been transporting or was going to transport these illegals in Air Force cargo planes. And he didn't like that. So initially, the response was that he didn't allow the planes to land. The decision made a very swift about-face, though, when President Trump explained things to him and reeled off a list of actions that he was going to take by not allowing the planes to land and bring these people back from whence they came. The Colombian president was critical of the U.S. deporting the Colombia illegals as treating them like criminals, he said. Well, guess what? They were and are criminals because they snuck into our country when they were not allowed. So, yes, they're criminals. So here's what President Trump was going to do when the Colombian government refused to allow our planes to land. Trump was going to put a 25% tariff on all Colombian goods entering the U.S., and it was going to be raised to 50% after 1 week. He was going to have a travel ban and visa revocation for Colombian government officials and their allies, a public denouncement of Petro's actions, framing them as a threat to U.S. national security and public safety. Trump issued a very stark warning on his social media platform, Truth Social, accusing the Colombians of jeopardizing the security of both nations. He said Petro's denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States. These measures are just the beginning. We will not allow the Colombian government to violate its legal obligations. In response, the Colombian government initially vowed to retaliate. They said that they would raise tariffs on U.S. goods by 25% and directed his administration to seek alternative trade partners. Petro later escalated his rhetoric, rhetoric, raising the tariffs to 50% and publishing a lengthy statement on social media accusing the Trump administration of exploiting Colombia's economic vulnerabilities. Well, guess what? Again, President Petro, I wouldn't jump into a game of chicken with Donald Trump. President Trump, who has made cracking down on illegal immigration a cornerstone of his new administration, dismissed Petro's threats as posturing. He spoke to Fox News, highlighted the swiftness of Petro's eventual compliance, and reiterated the importance of enforcing U.S. immigration laws. Trump said Petro caved because he realized he couldn't win this fight. We're prioritizing the safety of our country and ensuring that nations honor their commitments. This initial clash between Trump and the Colombians underscores this complex relationship between the U.S. and Colombia, which they are a key ally in South America. But they're not going to dictate what we do, and especially when it means returning illegals from their country who have come to our country uninvited. It's just that simple. And look, they need us more than we need them. Big time. So who are these criminals, by the way? The Trump administration rolled out a social media thread yesterday highlighting the, quote, worst criminals arrested by ICE since President Trump was sworn in last Monday. The White House X thread reads, under President Trump's leadership, ICE agents are working tirelessly to protect our communities from illegal alien child rapists to gang members and individuals with suspected ties to ISIS. Here are some of the worst criminals arrested. Then they posted wanted posters with these these men, their mugshots. One post reads, make America safe again. Edgar de la Cruz Manzo, a convicted child rapist and Mexican nationalist who was arrested by ICE in Seattle on January 25th. Another post reads, make America safe again. A Jordanian national with suspected ties to ISIS was arrested by ICE in Buffalo Rouse's Point on January 24th. Another post, make America safe again. An MS-13 gang member from El Salvador wanted for aggravated homicide with a red notice was arrested by ICE Los Angeles January 24th, and the list went on. Border Czar Tom Homan warned that daily deportation numbers are set to rise in the coming weeks as President Trump's administration begins to expand its operations. Homan made the comment during a Sunday appearance on ABC News this week with host Martha Raddatz. The border chief says that the administration is currently only targeting violent illegal aliens, but that soon will change and the number will only be increasing with each day.
So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes, but you can see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture. Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats. That's a smaller population. So we're going to do this on priority base, as President Trump's promised, but as that aperture opens, there'll be more arrests nationwide.
That is, if these criminals stay in our country. I got a feeling we're going to see a lot of self-deportation. These criminals are going to pack up and leave our country because they realize now that they're not safe, that we're not going to just turn the other cheek, that we're not going to ignore the fact that they're here, that we have a government now who's going to protect citizens of the United States, who's going to protect our borders, our sovereignty. But here's the thing, even after the American people spoke very loudly on November the 5th, there's still some in the mainstream media who still just don't get it. They don't understand. They're still trying to protect the so-called rights of illegals. Case in point, over the weekend, CBS anchor Margaret Brennan was talking with Vice President J.D. Vance. They actually were kind of sparring over the idea of unvetted illegal immigrants and refugees during this Face the Nation interview. Brennan asked the vice president for his thoughts on President Trump, through executive order, putting a pause on refugee resettlement operations while demanding enhanced vetting for visa applications, which is a fair thing to do. She specifically asked whether he stood by his past comments that the U.S. should not abandon anybody who's been properly vetted. although we don't know that the vetting process has worked the way it's supposed to. Here's J.D. Vance's response.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand
concern
by it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These
It's
people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really
But
care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
And of course, most Americans agree with you, Mr. Vice President. Margaret Brennan and her cronies in the left media just don't get it. They still don't have the message that Americans want our borders protected. We're tired of people coming into our country when they're not supposed to be here. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. One more thing on illegal immigration before we move on. The DEA and federal law enforcement agencies executed a significant operation early yesterday morning. They targeted Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang in Colorado. You know, these are the ones who have made headlines this past year when they pretty much took over an apartment building in a part of Colorado. The authorities raided a makeshift nightclub, we're told, in Adams County that was a so-called invite only and reportedly filled with these gang members. What they didn't realize was ICE didn't need an invitation. ICE didn't care if it was invite only. The site was allegedly a hub for drug trafficking and other illegal activities. Nearly 50 individuals who were identified as illegal immigrants were taken into custody during the raid. Federal agents seized drugs, weapons, and a lot of cash during the operation. The operation was led by the DEA's Rocky Mountain Field Division in collaboration with Homeland Security Investigations, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Many of those arrested have been linked to the Venezuelan gang, this Tren de Aragua, known for its involvement in drug trafficking, extortion, and violence. These are bad guys. These are mean people. They will kill you without even thinking about it. This raid also highlights the gang's expansion beyond its origins in Venezuela, originally thought to only be in some of the major cities. Now we're seeing them pop up all around the country. The operation is part of the Trump 2.0's nationwide crackdown on criminal illegal immigrations. And again, I think this is going to send a very clear message to a lot of these Mexican and South American gangs that the U.S. is not playing around anymore. You may want to just pack up and go back home. Otherwise, you could end up in a U.S. prison. Since President Trump's inauguration, ICE and federal agents have conducted many high-profile raids because they want people to know what they're doing. They want the message to get back to these gangs and to these thugs. That's why they're making such a big deal out of it. That's why they're wanting this to be in the news, because they know that these crooks, that these illegals, that these gangs, that the Mexican drug lords in Mexico and South America, all around the world, that they're watching the news. They're watching the Trump administration very closely to find out if he's really going to do what he's been saying he's going to do. And by the way, he is, isn't he? The administration has prioritized targeting organized crime units like this gang and many others, because they're going to restore law and order. They're going to protect the American people. President Trump announced retaliatory tariffs, as we talked about earlier, against Colombia for refusing to accept U.S. deportation flights. He got into a game of chicken with the Colombian president yesterday, and the Colombian president, he blinked first. The DEA shared images and video from the raid showing detainees lined up in handcuffs just outside of this nightclub. Again, I thought it was funny that it was invitation only, and ICE showed up, federal agents showed up. Wonder what they thought when these agents came storming into their invitation-only party. You saw in the video law enforcement buses just lined up, ready to put these guys aboard in handcuffs. And a lot of the contraband that was recovered included a lot of firearms. These bad guys have guns, big time. This operation, again, reflects the administration's commitment to tackling illegal immigration and doing it quickly, prioritizing the removal of individuals linked to criminal enterprises, ensuring that border and national security is enforced. And they're not going to back down. One more thing, too, on Vice President J.D. Vance, because he was front and center over the weekend. He expressed his disappointment yesterday over criticism from U.S. Catholic bishops regarding the Trump administration's early immigration policies. As a practicing Catholic, Vice President Vance suggested that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops may be motivated by financial interests rather than purely humanitarian concerns like they pretend to be, pointing to federal funding that the organization received during the Biden administration to help resettle unauthorized migrants. So what do you think it is? You think Vance is right? That it's the money that this Catholic group wants? That the Biden administration has been giving them? In an interview, Vance questioned the USCCB's motives. He said, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? The vice president also noted that the bishops had not been supportive of the immigration enforcement policies that Americans had voted for. The USCCB has strongly opposed several of the Trump administration's early executive orders on immigration. Among those, Archbishop Timothy Braglio, president of the USCCB, described some of the orders as deeply troubling. Bishop Mark Setz, chair of the USCCB's Migration Committee, accused the administration of dismantling humanitarian protections, leaving vulnerable children in dangerous situations. They always go back to the argument that the children are not being protected, don't they? Think they've ever thought that maybe the parents should have thought about their children before they put the whole family in this situation? Maybe the parents should not have come into the country illegally if they're so concerned about the children. And as Tom Homan has said, he's not going to separate families. He's not going to take children away from families. He's going to send them all back, which is what they should do. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. President Trump was pretty busy over the weekend. He was in Western North Carolina, of course, on Friday, taking a look at some of the damage that was done by Hurricane Helene and just talking with people, just trying to assess the situation. He had some observations about FEMA we're going to talk about in a minute because, he's not a big fan of FEMA. And if you look at what FEMA has done or hasn't done in Western North Carolina, you kind of understand why. I mean, FEMA is supposed to be the cavalry, right? They're supposed to be coming into an area and saving people, taking care of things. Well, apparently, they've been asleep at the wheel when it comes to North Carolina. And as President Trump said, FEMA is not good. Those aren't just words, folks. That's a promise that he's going to have real reform of FEMA. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, FEMA. President Trump didn't hold back, saying, quote, I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA, maybe just eliminating FEMA altogether. Because the president thinks that maybe if he sends the money that FEMA spends to the states can better spend it. And why not take a look at this? Why not look at things a little bit differently? How many times in recent years when we've had natural disasters has FEMA dropped the ball? So maybe it's time we take a real hard look at FEMA and not just think, well, that can't be done. This is a federal agency that responds to emergencies. We can't mess with them. Well, of course we can. Trump doesn't want to just put a Band-Aid on a problem. He wants to bring in the wrecking ball to the whole system and really get under the hood and find out what's working and what's not working. And obviously, FEMA must not be working, because we hear this over and over again. It's not just Western North Carolina. It's happened in Florida. It's happened at a lot of natural disasters. We're seeing it in California again. And let's just face it, Donald Trump has a point. FEMA's inefficiency has left thousands of people in North Carolina and other states in limbo. We're told that some are still stuck in hotels months after the hurricane. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers reports that only half of the debris cleanup is done. Folks, that's embarrassing that a country as great as ours can't seem to get Western North Carolina cleaned up, can't seem to get people in housing. The people of North Carolina deserve better, and President Trump is stepping in where bureaucrats have failed. And yes, they may get their feelings hurt. Yes, there may be some overhauling of a system that evidently doesn't work. South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace was asked by Fox News about FEMA being dismantled. She didn't hold back. She didn't hesitate to agree, says it's time to take action. Even when Asheville, North Carolina's mayor says, well, we don't need to make any rash decisions here. We don't need to upset the apple cart in the middle of this. Here's the exchange.
After visiting hurricane-damaged North Carolina and fire-ravaged Los Angeles, President Trump floated the idea of getting rid of FEMA. The mayor of Asheville, North Carolina, a Democrat, doesn't like it. Let's play it.
If you were to instantly make that go away, I think it would be devastating for individuals, for businesses, for cities, for counties, and for the state of North Carolina. You would have to be very thoughtful in terms of how you did that. And I would urge the president not to make any rash decisions around reconstructing FEMA right now, as we're in the middle of recovering from this disaster.
You obviously get hurricanes in South Carolina. Are you ready to scrap FEMA?
Oh, absolutely. And look, you saw Donald Trump show up to North Carolina over the last couple of days and see the devastation that North Carolina residents continue to live in, the squalor, the tents, the RVs, the homeless, those that can't afford to pay for a hotel. What has FEMA done other than house criminal illegal aliens? They had $1.45 billion they sent to house illegals. And that money could have been used in cities in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, those that were hardest hit. And look, I think if we block grant emergency resource funds to states, put governors in charge, maybe Gavin Newsom in California would get back to work for the people of California.
All right, tomorrow, House Republicans gather in South Florida for a retreat to talk about advancing the Trump agenda. What are your expectations, Congresswoman?
Well, a better understanding of how we're going to implement his agenda through Congress, because there will be roadblocks by some Republicans and a lot of Democrats that will try to stop President Trump's agenda. So how can we leapfrog over those hurdles that we will see? And also, what's the priority, and in what ways are we going to reduce taxes and keep those tax cuts permanent? How quickly are we going to deport millions of illegal aliens? How are we going to protect women? All those things that Trump promised on the campaign trail, and he's keeping those promises. He did more in his first 4 days than Joe Biden did in 4 years. And how can we help him?
From the 2nd Congressional District of South Carolina, Representative Nancy Mace. She's right. And back on what the mayor of Asheville had to say, she's a Democrat, by the way. You need to understand that. But why would someone like the mayor of Asheville be concerned about whether or not FEMA is reorganized or not? She has to see for herself FEMA hasn't worked. Trump brought up the idea, and I think it's genius. He said, I'd like to see the states take care of disasters. You'll do it for less than half, and you're going to be a lot quicker to respond. Bingo. I mean, who knows a state better than its own leaders? Why rely on Washington bureaucrats who can't even find their own desk in a crisis? And I think Representative Nancy Mace is right. You block grant that money that FEMA is spending. Plus, you're going to have a lot more money to send down because with FEMA, you're going to eliminate all the administrative costs. So if you took the same amount of money that's in the FEMA budget and you sent that in the form of grants to states, I think they're going to be more efficient and they're going to get it to people a lot faster. I think the president is spot on here. States need the tools and resources to respond to disasters directly. And Trump's vision is about empowering local governments while cutting out the inefficiency. And let's not forget, the cost of FEMA's bloated bureaucracy has to be, you could help a lot of people. You could house a lot of people in Western North Carolina for what these Democrats are being, these bureaucrats are being paid. Actually, I was right to begin with, wasn't I? Democrats, because most of the bureaucrats are Democrats. While FEMA has dropped the ball, President Trump is making sure that North Carolina and California, did you happen to see him arrive in California on Friday? Governor Gavin Newsom wasn't supposed to be part of the welcoming committee. In fact, Newsom wasn't even supposed to be involved at all. He showed up at the airport uninvited and was just standing there on the tarmac waiting for President Trump to get off of the plane. Now, it seemed like forever because Fox News kept a live camera on Newsom. He was just standing there by himself on the tarmac waiting for Donald Trump to come off of the plane. And I think Trump was sitting there looking out the window of the airport and made him wait for a while because it seemed like a long time. He did eventually come out. He came down. He greeted Gavin Newsom cordially. They shook hands. They talked. Then they walked over and they spoke with reporters there. And President Trump said in front of the governor, and the governor said in front of the whole world, we're going to work together. We're going to get this resolved. President Trump said, I'm going to take care of California. Now, get this. FEMA was about to boot families out of hotels this month in some of these areas. But thanks to Trump's intervention, those families now have until May 26th. They got a little extension now. There are over 3,000 families who would have been out in the cold. Now, this is back in North Carolina's case. So while Democrats are sitting on their hands, literally, President Trump is rolling up his sleeves and getting the job done. Joe Biden has had months to respond to this and didn't do it. Joe Biden he sat back and let FEMA try to take the lead on it, and we all know that FEMA is not capable of it. President Trump also made it clear that this isn't just about one storm or one state. He said it's about the systemic failure in how our country handles disasters. He called out FEMA for failing the country, not just North Carolina, not just California. He pointed to Democrats who don't care about North Carolina, and he's right. If they cared, why wasn't this fixed months ago? Why does it take Trump to fly into the eye of the storm, literally and figuratively, to get things moving? Why didn't Joe Biden do this immediately after the storm? So what's the takeaway here? Leadership matters. That's it. Accountability matters. Donald Trump is showing America once again that he's not afraid to tackle the hard issues, even when it means taking on an entrenched bureaucracy, because that's FEMA. FEMA is as entrenched as you'll ever get, and they have failed North Carolina. But President Trump's not going to let the people of that great state be forgotten. And he showed that on Friday by showing up and pledging to them his support. So whether it's fixing FEMA, whether it's empowering states to do what's best for their people, or stepping in to help Americans left behind, Trump is proving that he's the president who gets things done. And boy, last week was a head-spinning week. This week is going to be even busier. While the left says it stays busy with their endless investigations and political games and trying to stop everything that Trump does, Trump is just busy rebuilding North Carolina and keeping his promises to the American people. I think we're going to see the same thing happening in California, whether they deserve it or not. You know, we can't blame the ordinary Californian for what their Democrat left-leaning government does. Although I guess we can blame them for putting them in place, but maybe they've learned a lesson. Maybe they've awakened and they'll make some changes. I hope they do. Folks, this is why we fight. This is why we support President Trump. It's about results. It's not about rhetoric. It's not about showcasing. It's not about politics. It's about getting results, and that's what Donald Trump's all about. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, you know, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. Okay, one more thing, and I know I keep saying this. I keep saying that this is the last thing on illegal immigration, but protecting the southern border, that's an important issue. President Trump has come up with another way to do this, and I think it's ingenious. He said in Las Vegas over the weekend that he has a plan to repurpose IRS agents. Trump proposed relocating the nearly 88,000 IRS agents hired under the Biden administration to the U.S.-Mexico border. He suggested they could patrol the area while being armed, citing existing provisions that allow certain IRS agents to carry firearms. Now, remember these 88,000 agents that Joe Biden hired that you and I were just vehemently against, and he did it anyway because he was able to get it past the Republicans in Congress at the time? So now Trump wants to pull them off of audits and increasing our taxes. He wants to put them at the border. and you remember when they made such a big deal out of the fact that these IRS agents would carry firearms, that they'd be armed? Trump reiterated his decision to halt the new hiring of any IRS agents, so there won't be any more IRS agents hired in the near term. This was approved under the Inflation Reduction Act. You know that act that had nothing to do about inflation, that Joe Biden was so proud of. He went around the campaign trail before he was pushed out by his own party, just bragging about the Inflation Reduction Act. It didn't do anything to reduce inflation at all. Trump also floated the idea of just abolishing federal income tax entirely, suggesting that tariffs could replace it as the primary revenue source for the government. He referenced the U.S.'s reliance on tariffs before the introduction of income taxes back in 1913 and argued for a return to such a system. Now, I don't know, because if it's tariffs only to raise our federal government's operating funds, that means we're going to pay a lot more for goods that we buy, unless we can just start relying on U.S. manufactured goods to begin with, which is what we should do. We need to start making what we need right here in our own country so that we don't have imports flooding in. Also on this trip to Vegas, Trump has been talking about no taxes on tips. This was a proposal aimed at benefiting employees in sectors like hospitality and dining. Well, he brought that up again to a cheering group of a cheering group of people in the service industry. And look, Las Vegas is the capital of the service industry. Trump emphasized his administration's ongoing efforts to dismantle federal diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we saw that last week. And boy, people are really literally standing on their heads about eliminating DEI. I saw a story yesterday about a conference at South Carolina State University. South Carolina State is an all-black school, higher education. Evidently, they had some type of job fair coming up that was all centered around DEI. They canceled it because of the actions that Trump took last week, eliminating all diversity officers. Now, let me ask you this. The first thing that crossed my mind is, if this conference was so important to get these young black students jobs, why would you cancel it just because Donald Trump is eliminating DEI? Don't they still need jobs? Why would you just cancel this? Is that kind of acknowledging that some of these programs wouldn't exist if the federal government didn't enforce it, didn't mandate it? Also last week, we saw the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization, which is another campaign promise of Donald Trump. We saw, of course, him double down on the focus on stricter border enforcement, energy independence. There's a big week on energy independence last week, and on tax policy reform. Last week was a busy week, folks. But guess what? This week's going to be busy too. As President Trump is entering his second week in office, he's going to have he has a combination of scheduled events and the potential of unexpected announcements, which he's so good at. You never know what's going to come out of the White House right now. So here's what we know. House GOP, they're going to be having a retreat at Trump National in Doral, Miami this week. President Trump is set to attend to talk with House GOP leaders to come up with a strategy on some of his major legislative goals. And those goals, of course, involve additional border security, additional domestic energy production, and a tax plan. Early discussions on a new tax reform package to align with Trump's America First economic agenda. It's going to be a busy week. House Speaker Mike Johnson has emphasized the importance of the retreat in finalizing what he called a blueprint for a massive reconciliation package expected to tackle spending cuts and regulatory reform. Also, House Speaker Mike Johnson has invited President Trump to deliver an address to a joint session of Congress, laying out his legislative agenda and his vision for the next 4 years. That will take place March the 4th. It'll be sort of a State of the Union speech. Senate Commerce Committee hearings on the Panama Canal. Did you see where the Panamanian government has ordered an audit? So suddenly, rather than posturing and trying to say, oh, you're not going to take our canal back, they decided they're going to get on board and they're going to actually audit this. I think it's, is it Taiwanese who are the company that is right now managing the Panama Canal? No, maybe they're from Hong Kong. Anyway, the Panamanian government has hired auditors to get in there and take a look to make sure that it's being managed properly, because they understand that Donald Trump is not just threatening to take it over because it's being managed improperly. The Senate Commerce Committee hearing on the Panama Canal is headed up by Senator Ted Cruz. The hearing will examine the Panama Canal's importance to the U.S. trade and national security. This, of course, is in response to President Trump saying that maybe we need to take it back from Chinese influence. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to Panama and other Central American nations this week, again, kind of emphasizing the administration's focus on strengthening U.S. influence in the region. And I got a feeling that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is not going to be like Vice President Kamala Harris was, where she was flying around down there talking about, well, we're going to get to the root causes of our illegal invasion. Marco Rubio is going to get to the real causes. We will also watch the confirmation hearings this week of Tulsi Gabbard for Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for EPA Administrator, Kelly Loeffler for Treasury Secretary, Kash Patel for National Security Advisor. It's going to be another busy week when it comes to confirmation hearings. These hearings are expected to be contentious at times, particularly for Gabbard and Kennedy, given their bipartisan appeal and the history of controversial statements that both of them have made. And, of course, as Tom Homan promised, we can watch for these deportation operations, too. Homan and Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bovee will oversee enforcement actions in Chicago, we're told. ICE and federal agents have been active nationwide this past week, and we'll expect to see more of that this week. Again, it's going to be another busy week for week 2 of Trump 2.0. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.